Wahoo! Hey, welcome to the Bike Lab today. Hey, yeah, I'm wearing a Lance hat and a Tour shirt. Don't change the channel. Keep watching. So, here's what I want to talk about, a kind of a weird thing. But, you know how two people will be like totally in love and they'll have this wonderful relationship for years, and maybe they'll travel the world and they'll see the sights and they'll have really good times together, but something goes wrong and their relationship falls apart for who knows what reason, apply your own, but they break up and they both hurt and they feel really, really bad about the breakup. And because they feel really bad about the breakup, all of that wonderful stuff, you know, touring Scotland and seeing the pyramids and going to the Rift Valley or whatever, I'm just making stuff up, but it's gone. They can't think of it. They can't think of the amazing good times in the Thanksgiving of 2010 was a wonderful day, but I can't remember because it was at her house or whatever, right? Something like that. And so we can't think about that. Anyway, maybe you guys have had an experience like that sometime in your life. And maybe you used to root for Lance and then you found out, oh, he was a doper and he was a nasty person. So all my rooting for Lance is gone. Man. Oh, I can tell you that I really, really liked watching the Tour de France. In 1999, you know, there was a Nike ad in 1999 while Lance Armstrong was winning the Tour de France. And the Nike ad said something like, Lance Armstrong should have died of cancer, but instead he's winning the Tour de France. Just do it. Or something like that. And it was, what an amazing thing. How, you know, the 1998 Tour de France was when they had the big, huge doping scandal. 1999, we got this cancer survivor winning the Tour de France decisively. It was such an amazing feeling. But then he betrayed us. It's gone. It's gone. We can't think about that. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because here's the thing. Lance revolutionized how to train. And yeah, part of his training program was he doped, and that made him a whole lot faster. But he did other things in his training program that we could all learn from, and we could all be better because we learned from those things. But we don't let ourselves look at that, because Lance was A, a doper, and B, not a real nice guy. And so we have to dismiss that. So let me give you an example. In the 2001 Tour de France, Lance Armstrong sat at the back one day and pretended he was sick. This was the day of Alpe d'Huez and several other huge passes to go over. So he sits at the back and pretends he's sick. And by sitting at the back pretending he's sick, his rivals decide this is the day to put the hammer down and see if we can really hurt Lance and get some time on him. You know, if he's sick and we make him feel bad all during the day, we get to Alpe d'Huez, we drop him, and we put minutes on Lance. This would be a great strategy. So Jan Ullrich's team and some others go to the front and they just destroy all of their team guys to just go really fast over all of the passes, while Lance and his team sits in the back and pretends that they don't feel good. And then they get to Alpe d'Huez, and all of a sudden there's the whole U.S. Postal team at the front, and Lance goes and drops Jan Ullrich climbing up and puts time on him. So there were two really interesting things that happened there. The first thing that happened was this strategy, and figuring out later after the day that this was a strategy that they had to have talked about before and planned and pulled it off. That's really a pretty cool thing to understand how the strategy works. And the second thing about that was the way Lance climbed that mountain. Not the fact that he did it in almost record time. I mean, the record time is about 38 minutes, and he did it in about 38 minutes. And so, wow, that's amazing. But he was doped, and we know that. So we could say the 38 minutes doesn't really count. But instead, let's look at the technique that he used to climb. And what Lance did, getting out of the saddle, being in the saddle, Lance was able to use a lot of hip agility, a lot of core strength, a lot of ways of riding the bike that are technically superior. Absolutely technically superior over the way Jan Ullrich rode his bike. And Lance put that distance on Jan probably mostly out of technique, because Jan was also doping. So I know we can't equalize because you don't know any of that. But the reality is, studying the techniques that Lance used to climb Alpe d'Huez that day could be really, really beneficial. But we can't study the techniques that Lance used to climb Alpe d'Huez that day because he doped and he sucks and he's a nasty guy. Just like if you broke up with somebody and you can't think about that time when you were at Thanksgiving and people were telling jokes and you're laughing and you're having a great time because it was at her family's house, so we can't think about that. Maybe you can think about that. Maybe you can say, Lance doped. And the time, the 38 minutes and however many seconds it took him to get up Alpe d'Huez that day doesn't really count because he doped. Great. Let's toss that out. But let's still look at the tools that he used to climb that weren't doping. And the tools that he used to climb were out of the saddle fast cadence, out of the saddle slow cadence, in the saddle slow cadence, and in the saddle fast cadence. And in using all of those tools, he had to use a lot more of his body, and he was able to distribute the energy expenditure over more of his body. And that's a great tool. Jan Ullrich, on the other hand, climbed the entire mountain in the saddle with his hands in the drops, one position the entire time. Jan Ullrich probably could have been faster up that mountain if he had used more technique than he used. Raw power is not enough all by itself. We can compare those two. We can compare Jan and compare Lance and find out what the technique difference was and how important that was. So I just want to put that out there. How about we don't throw out all of the wonderful stuff that happens when something bad happens. This bad thing happens with this person. So all the wonderful stuff preceding, maybe we can keep that. Maybe we can find joy in that. Maybe we can learn from that. Just an idea. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. See you next time.